Nathan Thomas, welcome to Totally Lit. I'm so excited to have you join me.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks so much for the opportunity to have a chat.
I'm thrilled to be one of your authors with EK Books, and I'll just introduce you to my listeners. You're the general manager for Exile Publishing, and EK Books is the children's imprint with Exile. I'm super excited to have you join me to tell me a bit about your company at the moment.
It's a real pleasure to be here. So, supposed to trace the long journey. Exile, which is the parent company of EK Books, was founded by my dad, Gareth St. John Thomas, about a year before I was born.
Oh, wow.
So I won't give the exact date because some people will know how old I am, but it's a lot of decades. And my dad got his start in publishing through his dad's publishing company, David and Charles, which is still going. That was founded in the 60s in the UK. So this is a family publishing story that is very much in the generation. EK was started about a decade ago as a spin-off of Exile. So it's kind of its own thing. We've got its own website, ekbooks.org, and its own community, but it's also under that Exile publishing umbrella. There's a lot of overlap in staff, and it uses the same infrastructure, which is good because publishing, there's a lot of moving parts, and having the umbrella to help organize getting the books from A to B, for example, is very helpful.
Amazing. I have been really lucky to start my writing career with EK. It's been an amazing journey. And I feel like a lot of the Aussie authors here in Australia have really felt the same, that it's such a warm place to be connected with, and especially the kind of stories that you're sharing. There has been a little bit of a shift in the publishing market over the last couple of years, that things are seeming to feel a bit tighter. How have you been feeling on your end? I know it's such a different experience for an author submitting, but how is it on your end receiving submissions and planning?
That's a good question. So a publisher is the bridge in many ways between the author and the reader, right? So we need to facilitate the author to have the best possible version of their message and their story created. At the same time, we need to create something for which there is a market, for which there is a public demand. And aligning those two is not always an easy process. So from the EK side, I would say that submissions have never been busier. And the amount that we're getting is huge. And if there are folks out there who are waiting to hear back from us, you will, but it's going to take longer than normal. And thank you for your patience on that. The volume is huge, and there is a lot of really, really good stuff there. I mean, if it was all, unpublishable, it would actually be easier to go through them because there are so many really important stories. There's a real wrestling match that we have to go through each one. And unfortunately, with the state of the book market that you alluded to, we have to make some really, really tough decisions. I mean, I think one of the beautiful things about EK is that historically it has cared a lot more about community and about message than necessarily about the commercial aspect of publishing. And just through a quirk of timing, unfortunately, one of the things I have to do is kind of be the bad guy in some places and really just make sure that whilst we're honoring our creators and serving communities, we're also making decisions that would result us being a viable business, because we need to be coherent and disciplined as a business in order to continue to function. And we wouldn't be able to serve anybody if we weren't able to continue to exist. So it's a really tough balancing act. Publishing has always been a tough business. It's not a business that people go into to make money. It's not a business people go into to have an easy professional life. It's a business people go into for passion. And you will notice if you look for an independent publisher these days, not all of them, but many of them, you Google an independent publisher from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you scroll down on their website and you'll see in the bottom right corner the Penguin Random House logo, or the Hachette Livre logo, or the Simon & Schuster logo. Like, more and more of the independents are being bought out, or rather just swallowed whole by the big five conglomerates. So the economic pressures are causing so much consolidation in publishing, and we think there's even more of a need for an independent voice. So we're balancing a lot of different things. We're doing our best.
Thank you. That's great to hear. I think we need someone who has a bit of a business head as well, because I think the challenge with being an author is we are in love with our stories and we're wanting to get those messages out. But also we've got to understand it's a commercial investment for a publisher to say to a writer, yes, we're going to publish your book. This is Yeah, and a financial investment as well as a just because it's a cute story doesn't mean it will necessarily get published.
Yeah, and I think it's understanding for authors too, what does it mean to get published? It means that your story becomes available, but it also means that your story becomes a product, becomes a commercial product. And maybe you want that, but maybe you don't. And for some very personal stories or stories that are designed to service very small and specific communities that the author already has access to, there are a lot of circumstances where a publisher may not actually be the best option in that role. I mean, a publisher offers we're a creative partner and we help create a better product through the expertise of our network of freelancers and our core team. And we're also a distribution partner. We help a book be made available to bookstores, to media outlets who wouldn't necessarily deal with authors on an individual level. So that's key. But not every book should have a mass market audience. And that's okay. I mean, if your book is about a very specific case or it's very local, finding ways to go directly to your readership, which has become easier and easier nowadays with Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing or Ingram Spark. These are really viable options that we definitely encourage authors whose books serve a smaller, specific community that they already have direct access to check out as well.
It's interesting to decide whether you're going to go with the self-published option or continue to try the traditional route. And I think some authors may consider it not as successful if you potentially self-publish. But I think the world is changing quite a bit now that hybrid publishing is a thing, self-publishing is a thing, and the traditional route as well. I think it's key to diversify at the moment to get your messages out.
I definitely agree with that. And I think each of those options has very different use cases. I mean, it's true that one of the important things that a publisher offers is kind of that imprimatur, that stamp of approval. And by offering that, it legitimizes a book, not just, it's not just gratifying for the author, but it legitimizes a book for the bookstore buyers, for the media organizations who wouldn't necessarily take an author's word for it. But the fact that there is a publisher giving it an endorsement gives it that extra credibility. But self-publishing used to have kind of a stigma attached to it as a soft option for folks who weren't able to go the direct publishing route. But as you mentioned, it's increasingly becoming more and more legitimate, particularly when the authors have a way to reach the community directly and they don't necessarily need to take advantage of those distribution channels that a publisher makes possible.
I guess one question I have for you, all of EK's books are books with heart. When you're looking at a manuscript, what leaps out to you? What are you looking for when someone's submitting a story to you?
So when you're checking out a manuscript from a publisher's perspective, you're looking for a lot of different things, but the most important thing is there an audience for this? And does this book serve that audience? And does this book serve that audience in a way which is newer or different or better or more exciting than existing things that serve that audience? So, for example, a topic that we cover quite a lot at EK Books is anxiety. Unfortunately, we live in a world where children have a lot of anxiety on their shoulders, and books can be a fantastic guide to help them navigate that. But a generic book on anxiety for children is not really going to stand out, certainly not anymore. Maybe 10 years ago when we got started, it did, but now more and more books serve that audience. You need to find a particular device, a metaphor to help children along, for example. So we have one of our classic books that we reprinted recently, Don't Think About Purple Elephants, teaches children how to manage their mind and how to navigate anxiety. And it's one that has been a perennial success for us. That's a really clear and vivid metaphor. So that's a unique tool by which children get to access to the subject line. And then you look a layer deeper just at the technical professionalism. Like, if this book is written in rhyme, does the rhyme feel natural and not forced? Is the manuscript spread out over that proper 32-page layout? Does the writer allow the illustrator to contribute to the story without shutting them out and providing the amount of guidance that is necessary on that kind of technical professional level? And if you have a book that serves a big enough audience for a publisher to get interested in a specific, interesting, and novel way that is executed professionally and competently, you're in the top 5% of submissions in the inbox.
Amazing. And if an author submits to you and the manuscript might need a little bit of work or they haven't quite nailed it, but you think there's potential, are you willing to work with someone on edits and things like that? Or are you expecting a polished, complete manuscript?
Oh, absolutely. No manuscript is 100% when it hits a publisher's inbox. And this goes for all genres, it's always a collaboration, a creative partnership. The question is, once something is brought on board to into that publishing ecosystem, a huge amount of resources are invested in that book. And not just in terms of time, staff time, and staff, who obviously have to be paid and work in offices that need to be paid for, but then all of the other various resources, the whole kind of train gets underway, and the publishing journey, it's 12 to 18 months long, and a whole bunch of different organizations are involved in it. So when a publisher decides to make that commitment, they need to be very, very, very confident that after this process, a viable product will result in it. One of the things that we have started doing is offering this level of support, the equivalent kind of support that authors would get if they were in the publishing organization, for authors who are a little bit early. So say for authors who are 80% there as opposed to 95% there, we can help people travel that extra 15% to get to where they need to be part of a publisher's organization. And that's what we offer through the Children's Publishing Academy, which is a resource and facilitator of mentorships programs from the same folks who work with EK. And that's been really popular, and that has resulted in a number of books getting to that stage that they wouldn't have otherwise have got to, and then actually being accepted separately by EK Books for publication.
So people who might think that they need a little bit of help with their work can apply to the Academy to get some assistance with their manuscript?
Absolutely, yeah. Our programs kind of ebb and flow because they're quite labor intensive, but when there is time available, we do make those available through childrenspublishingacademy.com, and it's still competitive, but it's more accessible than traditional publishing. I mean, just simple mathematics means that getting into the door of a traditional publisher is very improbable, even for a good author. I mean, we deal with hundreds of submissions for every handful that are accepted. And there are many good or even great books that miss out on having the care that they need to be developed just because of that equation. And that's true for all publishers. And so for Children's Publishing Academy, we try and widen that gate a little bit to help more authors find the path forward.
You did mention books around anxiety. How important is diversity and inclusion in the books that you're publishing in terms of things like ADHD and autism and those kind of conditions? Are you looking for manuscripts that include that kind of diversity?
Absolutely. The whole topic of neurodiversity is something that we've been really big on at both Exile, our nonfiction imprint, and EK Books. And we've published a lot of really exciting titles on those, and they serve a very large audience too. I mean, what we try to do is to have a book that speaks to those specific neurodivergent issues, but that isn't limited to just that audience as well. So, for example, we have coming out in October, we have Harry's, the lifeguard from Bondi Beach, which is about Anthony Harry's Carroll, who folks who watch Bondi Rescue will know, and it talks about how he had dyslexia as a child and was bullied as a result of that. So that's very directly relevant for parents of kids with dyslexia, but it's also relevant for all kids because there's a uplifting message there about tolerance, about respecting other people's differences, and about finding your gift, even though it doesn't seem obvious that you have the same gifts as the other kids. You have something different, and that's what makes you special. So it works because it speaks to a specific issue, but it is not limited to just that specific issue.
Now, you've got a few exciting opportunities coming up for Australian authors. There's a seminar coming up with Dimity Powell on September 24, which is a live online seminar. Did you want to tell me a little bit about that opportunity?
Yeah, so one of the things we're starting to facilitate with the Children's Publishing Academy is letting successful children's authors who we've worked with at EK Books kind of open up the hood, take some other authors under their wing, if you'll forgive the mixed metaphor, and just explain, well, here's how it actually works. Like, as a successful published author, here's how I actually got a publisher to say yes. Here's how I prepared a submission that was compelling. So we have two and real specific advice that others can replicate. So we have two events coming up for that. The first is on September the 24th with Dimity Powell. Dimity is a very prolific children's author, won numerous awards, not just with EK, but also with other publishers. Her book, At the End of Hollywood Lane, is one of my favorites. She's also written This Is My Dad, so many other titles. And she's just a great positive figure in the children's book space. That's happening on Wednesday, the 24th of September. And then a little bit later, on the 15th of October, is a seminar with Samantha Smith, who's the author of the EK title Harriet's Hungry Worms, which has been really successful and won a bunch of awards as well. And information about both of those is at the children'spublishingacademy.com.
I recently was at an event with Dimity, and she was very kind with some advice to me because I just have one book, and I'm like, oh, I'm feeling pressure to get another contract. I don't know what to do. And she was very kind with some advice for me. So definitely everybody, I recommend that either jumping onto Dimity or Samantha's seminar will be very helpful with advice for emerging authors. And you're also at the Sketch and Scribe Festival in September as well. Are you doing assessments with authors at that event?
Yeah, I'm scheduled in. I have a note on my calendar that I'm appearing on the 16th to help out with the event, which we're really excited about. I know that we've supported them in the past and we love what they're doing. I haven't entirely done my homework yet about exactly what I need to be prepared for, but I know that it's an event that EK has supported in the past, and I'm really excited to be behind them again. So any folks who are aware of that event or want to Google it and find out what's going on, I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
Fantastic. So that message to me is that you are looking for new manuscripts and new talent by being involved with those kind of events, other than through the slush pile.
Yeah, absolutely. And I sound a little cautious because I'm speaking to you knowing that we have, the amount that our team still needs to go through in terms of manuscripts that have been received is pretty vast, and we need to give them, really give them time and due consideration. So that's going to take a while. At the same time, we're still publishing new books. We've just put out Goldilocks in September. We have Harry's in October. We have a new book from Dimity coming out early next year. We slowed down our publishing timeline because we're just publishing too many books for our operations to sustain, and we want to publish fewer so that we can give each book more love and more attention. So that unfortunately squeezes the straw a little bit narrower in terms of the manuscripts that we can expect. But we're an active publishing house, and therefore it is healthy for us to be looking for the right book. And it's because the publishing timeline is so long, we're actually trying to shorten it a little bit so we can be a little bit more agile, a little bit more reactive towards what the market wants. So if a manuscript arrives tomorrow, even though it seems like we have enough intellectual property to keep us busy for years hence, but if a manuscript arrives tomorrow that is perfectly calibrated to what we believe the market wants right now, that's something that we can always move quickly on. So definitely, like to authors, there is always a chance with EK. It is harder now than it used to be. It may get easier in the future just as we refined our rhythm, but there's always worth shooting a shot. But I would definitely advise folks, if you go with this publisher and you go with publication, be very clear about what your goals are and why you believe that we're the right publisher for you based on things that we've brought to the market in the past and based on how we're structured as well. I mean, there are a lot of unique things about EK, but one of them is that we aren't, although we were founded in Australia, we are very much a global operation. I mean, I'm speaking to you right now from Poland. We have staff in the US. We have warehousing in the UK, in the US. We have authors from all of these countries. Canada is actually quite big for us. We have a big book coming out soon by Canadian authors. So we're very global. And that's a pro, and in some ways it's also a con for authors. It's a pro because your book serves a much wider audience and therefore has a bigger chance of being successful. And should it take off, it can take off higher than it would if it was just limited to one particular country. It's a con or it's a catch if your book is extremely local in subject line or flavor. So we get a lot of submissions from books that are very grounded in particular New Zealand or Australian cultural idiom, or about animals that they only have in Australia, or fauna that they only have in New Zealand. And that book is not going to get the kind of attention that we want it to get in the US or in the UK. So if that is your book, you're better off finding a local publisher that only publishes locally, because they're not going to care whether people overseas will understand your idiom or your language or the references that you're making, because they're only focused locally. So it's a real trade-off, but it's worth really understanding, if you are making that decision as an author, that you believe this is the right organization to bring your book to the market. Be very clear about why that is.
And if an author was wanting to submit, if they're not a kid lit author, what sort of pathway is there to the Exile publishing?
So Exile publishes, Exile, our main imprint, publishes nonfiction. And we've been very eclectic in the past. You will find titles from us on the shelves on everything from biographies of Second World War generals to the mystique of the cat, to beautiful landscapes, to dieting and health. What we found is that what the market expects from Exile, and where we have succeeded, is in a very specific remit, and that is lifestyle and well-being. So you can look out for more books from us on hobbies such as beekeeping. You can look out for more books from us on mental health and wellness, and on success in creative areas. And that's what we're really doubling down on. So we actually recently had a submission process. It closed only last weekend, called Experts Unleashed, where we invited submissions from subject matter experts with interesting life experience and also relevant qualifications that other people would benefit from. We got some really exciting submissions through that, and we're in contact with a bunch of potential authors who we expect to contract in the coming weeks. So that's really exciting. Our standard submissions form is open for nonfiction, even more so than with kids. It's understanding that books are products, and there needs to be a specific audience for your book, and you need to understand who that audience is. And please don't begin your submissions email with "this book is for everybody," because that it isn't. And that means you haven't done your work yet to really understand who your audience is. So a reasonably specific understanding of your audience is really, really helpful. And that will help us understand too, if we can be the kind of publisher to help you meet and serve that audience.
Amazing. And just in terms of the cost of publishing at the moment, have you been looking at things like reducing the size of books, like a picture book at 32 pages down to 28 pages, or doing soft covers instead of hard covers, and things like that?
Yes, we look at all options, and that's another one of the challenges of being globally orientated, because different book markets favor different publications. I mean, in the US and the UK, they're pretty agnostic as to whether it's a kid's book is in paperback or hardback. In Australia, the Australian children's book market is a hardback market. So we have put out paperback editions of some books in the past, and there are reasons why that makes sense in certain contexts. Overall, if you want a kid's book to be on the shelves at bookstores, it needs to be hardback. The size is flexible, and we actually are looking at smaller sizes of the books, which would reduce the print run, which would potentially allow us to print more, or to invest more of that budget in promotion. That's something we are exploring. And then, of course, the most important thing is just making sure the books sell. I mean, you don't need to quibble over the cents and over the dimensions if you have something that really lights a fire under people and that is flying off the shelves. So it seems like the most obvious thing in the world, but we just need to publish books for which there is a real need, for which there is demand, for which there is an audience.
Are you also considering what size print run that a book will have in terms of, I will say my print run was 3,500 books, which was exciting. But would you potentially, at a different time in the market, say, oh, well, we'll only print 500?
So the tricky thing about print runs and getting the print run right is like very, very difficult and obviously very important, because if you print too many books, you end up with stale stock and you've invested in product that isn't moving and you have to do something with it because it costs money to keep books in a warehouse. And if you print too few, then you've overpaid because printing becomes cheaper the more you print. And also you risk missing out on demand because your book won't be available. So it's a really fine art. And we're really looking at books on a case by case basis, getting feedback from our sales teams, getting feedback from our distributors, and trying to figure out what the sweet spot is. I will say we are being a little bit more conservative than historically we have been. We have made some pretty wild swings in the past, which have not aligned with the reality on the ground. And optimism is a beautiful thing, but we also need to be realistic about what the market expects from the books that we're bringing out and learn from our past experience. But also we can move pretty quickly. So if we take a more conservative print run, but a book is selling and we get that feedback from the market that this is moving, then we can reprint. And the most beautiful word in publishing is reprint. If a book is reprinted, that's, you can kind of like, if your book is successful, it's been reprinted. There are exceptions to this, but generally speaking, that's what makes a successful children's book, one that has been reprinted. And we really want to focus on books that we're going to be able to reprint and that will stay around for many years hence. Like, don't think though about Purple Elephants that I mentioned before. That's still just as relevant now as it was when it was first published.
How involved are you at the acquisitions level? Like, if someone is submitting a manuscript to EK, it then goes through that process of the team looking at whether they want to progress with the book. Is that something that you get involved with?
Myself personally, yeah, increasingly so. I mean, we have people who are more deeply immersed in the children's book world than I am, but I'm really the person who is accountable for, is this thing going to sell? And there are the same principles that apply in the nonfiction world with some differences and some nuance broadly apply to children's books. You can look at what other comparable books are out there. You can look at what specific need in the market, what specific problem is this solving, or in the way that it delights and surprises. And I do need to weigh in on that process. And as I've been getting myself more and more immersed in the children's world, I do find it is not as different from the nonfiction publishing space than I expected. I mean, all publishing is quite random. I was having the chat with the owner of a very established publisher in the UK the other day, and he kind of confessed to me that more often than not, he has no idea what is going to work and what isn't. I mean, publishing is in a lot of ways gambling, and in nonfiction, it can be a little bit more predictable. You know, your distribution can be a little bit more obvious. You have a book on bees, you're going to want to have it in books that sell honey and books that sell beekeeping supplies. Like, for kids' books, you never quite know if something is going to blow up, but you want to make sure that there is at least a baseline need for it that you can meet your expenses. So to go back to the Harry's example that I mentioned before, it has a structure which is one that I want us to really be doubling down on, which is a book that serves a specific community, in this case dyslexia, but is not limited to only that community. It can also be generally read and enjoyed by other folks. And then you get two chances to win. You can win by serving that community very well, and then you can also win by just having a delightful general interest book. But if you set out to just create a delightful general interest book, it's so competitive, the chances of getting attention are pretty small. So having that specific thing as like a stepping stone really makes it more likely that you will have a product that will work.
Amazing. And how tense do some of those acquisition meetings get? Is it people wanting to fight for a book, or is it an open general discussion?
The thing about publishing is, I mentioned earlier, people get in it for the love of it, and we fall in love with books and with authors, and it makes it very hard to say no, particularly to an author that you've been corresponding with. Maybe they've taken some courses, or maybe it's a name that you see a lot in the submissions inbox, and you really feel for them. And the book, you can kind of see if you change this and change that, then maybe it can work. And you really and this was something that was very characteristic of of my dad, he would very much fall in love with the potential of a book, and he would see the merit in every manuscript. He would see like, there is the gold here, and it's a really beautiful thing. And that unfortunately is where I kind of come in as the bad guy, saying, yes, we love this thing, but are we going to be able to pay for our print run if we take this to market? And it's not a role that, one loves to have, but it is a necessary one in order to make a business work.
I love that you're wanting to carry on that legacy from your dad about treating every manuscript with respect and looking at its merits. Because I think it's a difficult thing to put yourself on paper and then submit it to someone, and you're asking them to look after your precious baby in many ways.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm an author myself, and I know that feeling of sheer vulnerability that comes over you once you've hit the send button. And it's a really courageous thing to do. And a lot of the children's books that we get come from such powerful experiences dealing with, some of the biggest milestones and greatest tragedies that families experience. And they've gone through this horror of an ill child or a death in the family, and they want to help others face that with tools and resources that they've acquired the hard way. And it's a really beautiful thing. And trying to have that heart amidst the real business process it's a constant balancing act. It is. I mean, you need to, finding that sweet spot is, we're always going to be getting that wrong sometimes, but that's what we're aiming for.
I think the amazing thing as well is, like, I just have one book, but it has given me such an opportunity to share my voice and be involved and give back to the community. So I'm doing a few things as an ambassador for Carers Queensland and for Children's Rights Queensland here, and having those opportunities that I wouldn't necessarily have, but it's all been hinged on, I've now got a platform because I have one book. So I've been very grateful to EK that it's given me the opportunity to be out at schools, out at libraries, connecting with kids and sharing things that I'm passionate about. And without having that first published book, I wouldn't be able to do that. So I think that's a really meaningful way that authors, once they've got a body of work or a catalogue of books, they can be out in the community making a difference in significant ways, which I'm always pleasantly surprised by, that I can do that now. So it's a bit of power that you can have as well when you've got something you want to share and advocate for kids. And yeah, it's been a real joy for me.
That's so lovely to hear. And it's so important for me to hear those stories of things that happened before I was in this particular role, and just understanding that great legacy. And you've encapsulated the author's experience really well, which I think a lot of aspiring authors don't understand, is that when the book is published, that's not the end of the journey, that's the beginning. And then it's this wonderful passport that unlocks so many new rooms for you to be in. And it seems like you've really found your voice and your message in that community. And that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, it's been incredible, actually. I didn't really understand what was ahead of me, to be honest. I was just writing my little manuscript and just wanting one book. And it's really opened up a whole new world, which is amazing. So I've been very grateful for that. I'll get a little bit teary now. And I'll just let the listeners know I've been really behaving myself. I've got the opportunity to chat with Nathan, and I have not asked him anything about my own manuscripts.
That takes a lot of discipline. That takes a lot of strength. So well done.
It's a challenge. I think for all authors, they're like, oh, I've submitted and I haven't heard anything back. I wonder if I will hear anything. And the process can be quite long and drawn out. So I've been happy to have the opportunity to learn more about EK as well. Because even though I do have a book as part of your organisation, I don't know a lot about the nuts and bolts and the history of EK. So I appreciate you sharing that with me today.
Real pleasure. Thank you so much for helping me understand your story, and for asking wonderful questions and giving me the opportunity to chat about where we're going. It's been a big year for us, but we're excited to build on the strengths that we have. And we are inheriting a lot of strengths here and figure out a path forward that works for the authors, works for the team, but most importantly, works for the readers. We want to be bringing books out there that people are going to want to be reading time and time again and that are going to last. And that's what we're all trying to figure out how to do together.
And just for emerging authors who may be submitting to you for the first time, do you have a tip or a recommendation that you can share with authors who are trying to get published with EK?
Yeah, just get the basics right. And that means following that 32-page structure, writing a pitch letter in your own voice. Please don't use AI for it. We really can tell if a pitch is written with ChatGPT or something. I mean, all good if you want to use these tools in the background to help you structure your thoughts or something, but with the actual content that you submit, that should be in your words. After all, you're putting yourself forward as a writer, and although it's scary and hard to write in your own voice, and a lot of authors have a lot of hangups when it comes to marketing and advocating for their work, we really want to hear from you in your own voice. And you've mentioned how long the publishing journey is. When you're brought on as an author, it's a partnership that is often years long that you're entering into. So the publisher is choosing whether or not just whether to bring on your book, but whether to bring you on. And if you come across as someone who's professional, who's going to be a good marketing partner for your book, who's pleasant to work with, these are all big points in your favor.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me, especially from right across the other side of the world. It's been a pleasure to chat to you, and I'm looking forward to sharing the episode with my listeners.
Thank you so much, Kylie. We'll be sure to share the episode as well, and the pleasure's all mine.
Thank you. Totally Lit is an independent podcast. You can help support us to continue to chat with wonderful Australian creatives by leaving a review on iTunes or sharing our socials with your friends. You can also make a contribution at www.buymeacoffee.com/totallylit. This will also help with equipment and podcasting platform fees. I love to interact with our listeners, so feel free to say hello either by email or social media at totallylitpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and now Blue Sky. I've also created a group on Facebook called the Totally Lit Writing Community. It's a space to continue the conversation and share your writing successes, events, launches, and latest projects. Jump into the group and say hello. Thank you for listening to Totally Lit, and don't forget to go out into the world to read, write, create, ignite.